Joining me now is the Managing Director for the EGF, the newly launched fund. It is Najla Al Midfa. Welcome to the National. Good to see you. We're here to celebrate Make It in the Emirates.
Yes.
You're launching a fund. What is it and who are you targeting?
Thank you. It's great to be here. So we are actually targeting a critical gap in the UAE SME ecosystem. As you know, SMEs form the backbone of any economy. Specifically here in the UAE, 94% of all businesses are SMEs. They employ 86% of the private sector workforce and contribute to over 60% of our non-oil GDP. And yet, paradoxically, they receive less than 10% of business credit in the UAE and have an even harder time accessing equity capital. And a lot of these SMEs are actually strong, growing SMEs that need that capital to grow. And we estimate the size of that funding gap is $2 billion. So think about it, $2 billion of unrealized growth in the UAE. And so the Emirates Growth Fund was established this year, backed by the Emirates Development Bank. It's a 1 billion dirham fund that takes active minority stakes in SMEs in the UAE, providing them not just with patient capital, but also the strategic support to help them grow.
Would you describe yourself then as a new asset class here in the UAE?
I think so. So if you think about the two asset classes that are most well known in the equity space, you have obviously the venture capital asset class, targets primarily early stage tech companies focused on high growth companies, hyper growth as they like to call it, ideal outcome being a unicorn. And then you have the private equity asset class, which targets much more mature, stable businesses and often completely buys out those businesses. And so the founder doesn't actually retain control in the business. And then you have this missing middle, as we call it, which are SMEs that are looking to actually retain control. The founder doesn't want to exit the business, but requires the capital to grow the SME. And that's where we come in.
Well, then is it fair to say that you are private equity with a soul?
You can say that, yes. To be honest, I like to say that we take the best of both playbooks. We take the founder-led approach that VC typically takes, but then we apply the discipline of private equity. And so, yes, private equity with a soul sounds like a good tagline.
So you have 1 billion dirhams to deploy, but you're already actively making deals. What are they?
So we actually already have announced our first deal. It's an investment into an Abu Dhabi-based healthcare company that's growing tremendously. It started in 2019 and today serves over 25,000 patients a year. The company's name is Termeem Orthopedic and Spine Hospital. And the idea is for them to use this capital to offer complementary services. So for example, a physiotherapy clinic that they want to open up. They would like to expand their footprint into Al Ain and then also expand the existing facility in Abu Dhabi.
So tell me the kind of companies. That's the first deployment of capital.
Yes.
Who else should knock on your door?
So any companies in the 5 sectors that we're focusing on, which are manufacturing, food security, healthcare, as we've mentioned, sustainability, and then advanced technology. So these are the 5 industrial sectors that we're focused on. We obviously focus on companies that are headquartered and have a strong presence here in the UAE. Now, in terms of stage of companies, as we said, this is not a VC fund. We're not focused on early stage companies. We're looking for established SMEs that are already generating 10 million dirhams in revenue and are either profitable or are on a path to profitability. And then crucially important is also that they have growth ambitions. And then, like I said, taking a page out of the VC playbook, it's not just about the business's financial performance, it's also about our chemistry with the founder, because ultimately we're not just coming in as a silent investor, we're coming in as a partner in the business. Yes, a minority partner, these are stakes of between, let's say, on average, 20 to 40% of the business. But nonetheless, as we say with any co-founder, the chemistry is key. And so we do focus on the relationship with the founder as well.
Now, you would say, look, we don't need to find the next unicorn. You'd like to, but we don't need moonshots. But then this brings a very clear question about benchmarks. what is a realistic time frame over which you will invest? You say your patient capital.
Yes.
And what are the multiples that you want to achieve or that you're going to be happy with?
Yeah, we really are taking a quality over quantity approach. So we will only deploy the capital when we find the right deals. That said, given what I've seen already in the last few months, there's not going to be any shortage of SMEs that require this kind of capital. And I think we'll have actually a hard time choosing between the best. That said, once we have invested, we're in it for the long term. And we see ourselves as long-term partners being there. Unlike most, for example, private equity funds that typically hold for around 3 to 5 years, I expect our average holding period to be about 7 to 8 years. And even then, I would say we would only exit when the time is right for the business.
Do you think AI, I mean, the only word that anybody really wants to read about, watch, whatever, is AI.
Yes.
Is AI sucking the capital lifeblood away from the target market for you, the SMEs, do you think?
Well, I think most of the AI-focused businesses are typically funded by VCs. So this gap remains. But one of the roles that we would like to play as a strategic investor is actually bringing in technologies like AI into these more traditional businesses. And so that is a key part of the role that we play.
There's no doubt about it. There has been a propulsion in this economy of growth in population and in the economy. This piece of the puzzle, this capital piece of the puzzle,
yes.
Is it your role then to power that growth? Do you see the EGF as being integral to powering the next step up in growth?
Absolutely. I mean, the EGF was founded to be aligned with our national priorities and specifically with Operation 300 billion, which ultimately aims to have over 300 billion of the UAE's GDP being contributed from the industrial sector. As of 2024, that number stands at 210 billion. So this is very much aligned with national priorities. But that said, of course, it's part of an overall comprehensive capital stack. We have EDB, for instance, that's taking care of the debt side of things. At EDB, they've already provided over 16 billion dirhams of loans as of last year, 45% to SMEs, which is actually well ahead of the 10% that we talked about as the average business credit. So in many ways, this complements other offerings in the ecosystem.
You're very clear that you want to differentiate yourself against VC.
Yes.
I get that message. Yeah. But ultimately, sale and exit, that is ultimately where you want to go. So is this about feeding the UAE pipeline? We have 2 exchanges.
Yes.
So is this about exits at home?
Yes, absolutely. Now, whether they will be IPOs, we'll see. These are smaller businesses.
Sure.
So the way I see it is we're actually preparing them to potentially IPO down the line. So we're putting in place the strong foundations in terms of governance, in terms of strategic excellence and operational excellence. But ultimately, I expect that the exits will primarily come from trade sales from strategic buyers or secondaries from other bigger private equity funds. And ultimately also, and we should put that on the table, potentially founder buybacks. They may want to buy back that stake and then ultimately own the business themselves.
You're launching at a pretty volatile time in the world. Does that play to your strength?
I think it just highlights the importance of a fund like EGF. At times of volatility like this, LPs or investors generally tend to hold back. So the private capital tends to hold back, and that actually re-emphasizes why it's so important to have this long-term patient developmental capital available to SMEs. So I do think it works in our favor and more importantly fills an urgent need for SMEs.
Do you think there's a liquidity gap because of some of the blockage in the pipeline of exits?
Probably. I mean, I think that we're seeing a lot of deployment. I think deployment is going up, but I think the cycle has now been long enough that investors are asking where the exits are. And we have had, to be fair, we've had a few exits, primarily also on the tech side of things. So we've had obviously Talabat list last year. I think there are a few IPOs planned for this year that may have been delayed, but there have also been obviously well-known acquisitions in the tech space. But there have also been on the private equity side some good exits to speak about. But yes, exits do remain a challenge. We hope that will change. And our assumption and hypothesis is that will change over time.
We've seen huge volatility in markets recently across the world.
Yes.
Is there anything in your mind that will materially change that risk landscape and reduce that volatility?
Yeah, I don't think there's any one particular lever. I think there's a collection or a combination of things that do need to happen. Hopefully over time, as we see the lowering of interest rates, hopefully de-escalation in geopolitical tensions, the tariff situation stabilizing. I think all of these collectively will hopefully help provide that clearing event that you speak about.
And with that in mind, the President of the United States has just been to the region.
Yes.
And visited the UAE. How significant is that from a global perspective of the UAE and capital markets?
Yes.
And as a destination for capital?
I think it's a very strong message, and it reinforces the trend that we've been seeing recently, which is the flow of talent and capital to the UAE, making it a leading destination for talent around the world and capital from around the world. And so again, that does work in our favor.
And just to draw on some of your own personal experience, you studied in the United States of America, you've been at McKinsey, you have your master's. And you set up a similar kind of fund in Sharjah.
Yeah.
Draw together that personal experience. How are you going to bring that to bear in this role?
So I think you're absolutely right. It really does, this opportunity really does bring together a lot of experience from different sectors. I've been in the SME sector in the UAE actually since 2010. So it's been a decade of watching that sector grow and evolve, particularly on the tech side. I've always wanted to look at this sector in terms of the impact it can create and not just the financial returns. And I think this opportunity re-emphasizes that. But also, again, the discipline that comes from a place like consulting, an industry like consulting and a company like McKinsey will also obviously come in handy at a fund like this.
Najla, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you every success.
Thank you. Thank you.